Again. So my name is Julia Nichols, and I'm the Engagement Officer within the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. Welcome to Where Demand Meets Supply, Ethical and Fit for Purpose Examples of AI in Development. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. In a moment, I'm going to go ahead and paste our introduction document in the chat. I really encourage you all to introduce yourself there. Today is the first webinar in the Global Partnership's AI for Inclusive Development series. This past summer, alongside Development Gateway, we hosted an AI dialogue series discussing opportunities and challenges of implementing AI tools. If you attended those events, welcome and thank you back. If you are new to the series, we are excited you're here. These dialogues have informed the agenda today, and that we have asked some AI practitioners to come and discuss fit-for-purpose AI tools. There will be 2 focused discussions today. After each discussion, you'll have the opportunity to input any thoughts and comments. Your inputs are critical to informing our future actions in this area, so we greatly appreciate your future participation. I am now excited to introduce our moderator for this evening, Davis Adiano, the Global Partnership Senior Director of Programs. Over to you, Davis.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. Davis Adiano here. I'm the Senior Director of Programs at the Partnership, and I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. This is a quite intimate and unique and highly interactive webinar, and we want to discuss where demand meets supply, the ethical and fit-for-purpose examples of AI in development. And as you may have heard, this is part of the Inclusive AI for Inclusive Development series that we as the Global Partnership have been running to develop an agenda for action for deploying inclusive, ethical, and fit-for-purpose AI in development with the support of Microsoft. And as you may know, the push to develop and apply AI in development challenges to a large extent ignores the questions about when or whether AI is actually useful. And what we've heard from our network members and other participants in previous series, there's a lot of pressure, and this is coming from either policymakers, development partners, or funders. And AI is the new thing, and everybody's jumping onto it. And it's all about scrambling and seeking out applications of AI in their respective fields. So there's a bit of pressure. And at the same time, we have a large global audience that is still grappling with what AI actually is, what it actually means, and what it actually translates into their lives. And of course, there's a lot of caution against seeing AI as a one-size-fits all solutions. And in fact, from what we are hearing at the moment, there are limited situations where AI tools can currently provide helpful solutions. And we've had, for example, lots of chatbots being developed. Of course, they can help with access to information and interacting with organizational and institutional systems. But as we know, if you are applying a chatbot in the health sector, patients would actually seek the information, but it really doesn't guarantee that they will receive the diagnosis and the right to diagnosis, and it doesn't guarantee even after the diagnosis that they'll receive the actual service in terms of medication or treatment or access to affordable drugs. And so we have an opportunity and also a challenge. And from the work in Kenya, what we are also hearing a lot is about the building blocks of AI and the importance of an enabling environment to address some of the foundational aspects of AI, such as skills, infrastructure, energy, computing power, and more importantly, creating widespread awareness. As we may know, a lot of these tools and chatbots with limited access, to smartphones and other services, digital services, it might be a challenge, and we run the risk of leaving a lot of people behind. But I'm glad that for this particular webinar, we have Tracey Lee, who's the Senior Data Lead in Zanzibar at D3 International. We have Poornima Ramesh, who's a data scientist at IDInsight. We also have Swastik, who's a Senior Manager, Data Insights at MicroSave Consulting. and Mohak Srivastava, who's a financial inclusion service associate at MicroSave Consulting. So these speakers are really going to lead us into a conversation about tools and how these are being applied, how they came about them, and how fit for purpose they really are over the next couple of minutes. And then we're going to have an interactive session where we'll hear from all of you through a poll and then continue the series. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you finding time to join us, and I look forward to learning too, just like the rest of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Davis, and thanks for the invitation to speak today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to spend the next now 10 to 15 minutes talking to Poornima about an AI tool that she and her team have developed at IDInsight. And the reason I know Poornima is because part of my role at D-Tree, where I work, is to identify ways, or even first of all, ask if there are any ways in which AI tools can help us as an organization to have more impact in our work. So that can either be through directly improving the quality or effectiveness of the health programs that we operate, but it can also be through making us more efficient in the way that we conduct our work. And I and my colleagues think that the tool that Poornima's team is developing is one that can address a problem that we would like to solve. And more than that, I think it is a problem which is good to solve using AI, because AI will provide us with a better solution than the non-AI solutions that are realistically available to us. So in order that we can dive into that, I'll turn now to Poornima and ask my first question, which is that I think that everyone in the audience today will have heard how AI can be an amazingly effective and powerful solution to some problems. And that is true. But we should also acknowledge that AI can also be a complex solution, an expensive solution, and a risky solution. And so for that reason, we have to be careful to only use AI when AI is a good solution, because there are costs to AI as well as benefits. And so to illustrate what that looks like and provide an example, Poornima, could you tell us the precise problem that your tool is designed to address, and also tell us how you decided that AI would be a good solution to that problem?
Thanks, Tracey, and hello, everyone. I'd like to quickly introduce myself. My name is Poornima. I work at IDInsight. IDInsight is an organization that provides a wide range of data and evidence services to governments and not-for-profit organizations and funding organizations. And as part of our work, our data science team has developed multiple tools that use generative AI, predictive modeling, statistical analysis, so on and so forth. And as Tracey said, one of the things that we're going to talk about is a tool that we developed called Ask a Metric. So let me step back first and take Tracey's first point about AI being a powerful tool. And also, as Davis mentioned, we are all thinking about when is AI actually useful to be solving the problems in the development sector. And the way we at IDInsight approach this is that AI, at the end of the day, is still just a tool. The problems that we're solving still need to be foundational problems. So we always start by asking what problems is it that our partners are trying to solve? And then we try and work backwards from there to figure out which is the best tool that could help solve that problem. So when it comes to working with these new cutting edge technology and new cutting edge generative AI methods, we personally don't think that we should start with AI and then go around finding a problem to solve. And I think that is because the moment you start doing that, then everything looks like a nail that you can hit with the AI hammer. And this specific tool that we developed, which is called Ask a Metric, is trying to address the problem of allowing decision makers to directly access the data that they have. So essentially, what we have heard from multiple partners that we at IDInsight have worked with is that they collect a lot of data. So governments, not-for-profit organizations all have usually tend to have quite extensive monitoring and evaluation systems, which means they collect a lot of data about the interventions and the programs that they're running. And then usually they access this data using dashboards, or they generate reports from it, or they have, if they have the capacity for it, they have an IT team that runs queries on these databases to extract that information. But none of these methods really provides any deep context-specific insight to the people who are actually making the decisions. So imagine if you need to run into a meeting with your funding organization, or if you're a field manager that's trying to run a survey and trying to decide where you should be sending your enumerators next, or if you want to know how well your CHWs, your community health workers are doing in terms of reaching households where you want to collect information about access to healthcare. It's not always useful to go look at a dashboard or to read through a 100-page report. You want to be able to access the data that you're collecting directly. And so the tool that we built, which is called Ask a Metric, allows you to ask these questions directly in a natural language via WhatsApp. And we're using a large language model, a generative AI tool, to translate this question into code, run it on a database, extract the result, reframe this result in the context in which this question is being asked, and then return that information back to whoever's asking the question. And the idea behind using the LLM here is now we've cut out all the middlemen, and we directly provide access to decision makers to the data that is most relevant to them in a timely manner, and in a way that allows them then to quickly make decisions, particularly when it is time sensitive. I'll stop there. Back to you, Tracey.
Yeah, that's great, Poornima. And just to echo what you said, so it's very true what you said about making sure that every data user has access to the data that they need. So our health programs are quite complex. There are many different stakeholders with different data needs. And if you're trying to do this by just creating separate dashboards for everyone, in principle, that's a good solution. In practice, it gets very difficult because there are too many distinct groups with different needs. And so just maybe the second part of my question, Poornima, was what is it about that problem that makes AI particularly good to solve that problem? So for example, I've said, for us, we found that although we could do this without AI, just be creating several dashboards with many, many indicators, in practice, what's happening is that there are too many dashboards, too many indicators, and people are getting lost. In your experience, is this something you've also heard from your other users, other customers?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we've also heard from multiple partners that when we set up the dashboard, that you don't always find the indicator that you need, right? So we talk to the partner, say at the beginning of a monitoring and evaluation phase, and they tell us XYZ indicators are useful. So that's what we put on the dashboard. 3 months later, the indicators that they care about have changed, but the dashboard has not. Or we talk to, let's say, the C-suite in an organization, and then they tell us, here are the sets of indicators that are important. That's what we put in a dashboard or into a report. But it turns out the people who actually really need this information are potentially, I don't know, field managers or community health workers, and the information that they need isn't on the dashboard. But all of these metrics are present in the data that is collected. And so AI is a good option here, basically because converting text to code is something that AI we know is really good at. It's kind of talked about as a solved problem. And so what we were doing was basically taking something that is essentially a solved problem and kind of fine-tuning it so that it specifically plugs this issue of the information that people need, not being context specific and not being responsive to changing priorities, and having this LLM that can quickly parse text and context and provide information that is relevant, again, quickly and in a timely manner, without you having to like go through, I don't know, multiple rounds of like phone calls with a human analyst, or trying to like spend a lot of time on a dashboard trying to figure out what the correct keyword is. That is essentially the problem that the LLM is solving for you.
Yeah, definitely resonates with us as well, where I hear from my colleagues that the data analysts who usually get asked these questions, they find it annoying because what they're being asked to do is very simple for them. And because it's very simple for a human data analyst to do, that's a good job to give to an AI instead. And then also, as you've said, Poornima, it cuts out having to wait for someone to make a phone call to that analyst and find they're on holiday for 3 days and now I have to wait 3 days to get my answer, whereas a WhatsApp chatbot, you'll get the answer instantly. Yeah, so that's an excellent example, I think, of AI being a good solution to that problem. I'm going to move now on to my second question then, which is about privacy and ethics. So extremely high priorities in healthcare. Your Askometric tool at the moment doesn't actually use or provide information about individual patients. So it's not giving out information about individual patient records. Therefore, patient privacy at this stage isn't a concern for you. However, in the development of the Askometric tool, have you come across any privacy or ethics concerns that are relevant, and how have you addressed those?
Yeah, this is also an excellent point that I think people, when they're thinking about AI, they worry about like bias and hallucinations and kind of these abstract problems. But when it comes to practically implementing AI tools, I think there are multiple aspects of privacy and ethics to consider. The first is just compliance with data security laws, data privacy and protection laws in the countries that we're working in. Typically, most people, both entities, say not-for-profits, and other entities that are working in the health sector typically don't want the data to leave, say, the country that they're working in. Governments in particular are very concerned with these kinds of things. So we have had to build this tool in a way that we're able to accommodate all of these different requirements while still maintaining the accuracy of the bot and also the efficiency, right? You don't want to wait forever for your data to like travel across the world before it gets to you, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that that you're complying with all of these laws and restrictions that you have. So that is one level of like just how do you set up your compute infrastructure so that you're following these data and privacy guidelines. Where is your server sitting? Are you sending the data to OpenAI or not? Can you self-host your own LLM model? So these are all things that we're trying to make our app flexible to, so that we can switch out whether we send data to OpenAI or whether we self-host the LLM, things like this. The second aspect of privacy and ethics that we grapple with is the specific instance in which we deploy it for a specific partner. So in the case of doing it for D3, for example, we always, of course, you don't want the LLM to have access to private information about specific patients, but it is also relevant to ask, even in the case where you don't have access to private information, is it useful for every single user of the app to have access to every single aspect of the information, or should you be restricting who has access to what? And so we are also trying to build in features that in the app that allow these kinds of restrictions. Certain parts of the data are only accessible to certain kinds of people, and so on. And then we also think about things like what kinds of questions can you ask and what can't you ask, right? What is considered sensitive information, even when you've scrubbed out things about patients, can still be very different, right? Sometimes you have information about employee IDs, they're just numbers, but within the organization, knowing this employee ID could be an adverse effect. So do you have to prevent questions about things like that? Do you have to watch out for questions that we don't have information about within the database, and then you tell the user you can't ask information about these specific things because we don't know? So those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. And then the final aspect of privacy and ethics is also about data literacy, right? You can't rely on the LLM or the large language model to solve everything for you. So we have to restrict what kinds of computations the LLM does. And also we can't rely on the LLM to kind of solve issues of data quality, right? If you have it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you have poor quality data in your database, then the LLM is not going to fix it for you, and therefore it's going to produce bad quality answers. So we also spend a lot of time working with our partners to clean up and pre-process the data before it's ever connected to the LLM. So those are the levels at which we're thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great answer. I think lots of really good, real examples there of like very real considerations to take into account. So I like what you highlighted at the end, which is even though we're talking about AI, always this sort of mantra of garbage in, garbage out always applies, and emphasizing that AI isn't going to turn garbage data into non-garbage data. That is a problem for humans to solve somehow. And the other point actually that really jumped out at me was highlighting what data is being accessed by whom. And I think we don't always think about enough when we're using these LLMs, you know, are we sending data to OpenAI without realizing it, and being very careful about what information is going to OpenAI or other vendors, whereas what data really is being kept private or sent to other stakeholders. That was an excellent answer. Thank you. I'm just going to quickly ask David or Davis or Janet, do we have time for one more question, or should we move to the next pair?
I'll hop in here. We have, you got about 4 minutes. If you can do one more question in 4 minutes, then go ahead.
Great, thanks, Janet. In that case, Poornima, let's go for one more question, which is, you've touched a bit just on your previous answer about how making sure that, for example, the users are going to get the response in a time they need it. So on that topic of making sure that your tool is optimally usable for your user group, can you describe the sort of process you went through in order to ensure that this tool you create is going to be suitable for the operational setting that your users are in? For example, how did you identify what kind of devices or platforms to use, language requirements, and all these other contextual and cultural factors?
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. That is absolutely something that we always have to consider when we're doing these deployments of Askametric. It's before we started building the tool, as I mentioned, IDInsight does provide a lot of monitoring and evaluation services. So we had been setting up these dashboards and writing these reports and collecting this data for our partners for a very long time. And one of the things we always heard was that it would be like these dashboards and these reports, we always read them on our computers, but most of our work happens over WhatsApp. And so already just hearing that, we knew that we needed something where we could provide the information over messaging services. And in the countries that IDInsight works in, so predominantly Eastern and Southern Africa, Western, Northern Africa, India, Philippines, a lot of the work that decision makers do happens over WhatsApp. A lot of the communication happens over WhatsApp. So it was kind of a no-brainer that, that the app would be connected to WhatsApp. So we spent a lot of time just like talking to our partners while we were developing the idea for Askametric. And then the immediate next problem was, of course, the cost of setting this up. Unlike most other tech solutions, so what happens typically in a tech solution is that you pay a big upfront cost to set it up once, and then you quickly get returns because once you've set it goes down. This is not the case with LLMs, right? Because the more users you have, the more money you're paying in terms of keeping the infrastructure live. So the other thing that we've been kind of trying to do to make it optimal for our users is to drive costs down as much as possible. And that means making changes to the pipeline and making sure that things stay cheap while we maintain performance and accuracy. And then the final thing we do is that we try and get out a first version of the app as quickly as possible so that we can get feedback from our users. And then we don't build anything into the tool unless we explicitly hear from partners that they want this. So one quick example that I can give in the interest of time is whenever we present this tool to a technical audience, someone always asks us, oh, why is everything just over text? Why can't you send charts, or why can't you send voice notes? And it would be cool to do this, but no partner has actually ever asked us for voice notes or text, basically because they're mostly working in conditions where they don't have like great internet bandwidth. So you can't be sending voice notes and images. Text is actually best. So far we haven't built any images or voice note capability. We keep it to text because that's what our partners seem to want. So that's kind of how we're trying to make it optimally usable.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think, yeah, summary of that is really make sure that you ask the users what they actually want, and don't just build what you can build because you're able to build it, build what people actually need. So thank you so much, Poornima, for all your insights. I think our time for this slot is up now, so I'll hand back to you, Jonathan Davis.
Thank you so much for that really interactive conversation. And we do have a young guest who's joining us for the webinar, which is always fantastic. We want to create awareness and literacy at the youngest age. Thank you, Tracey Lee and Poornima. We are now going to launch a poll, which is an opportunity for you, all of you who've joined us. And over to you, Julia, if you could launch the poll just now. Then if you could go to Slido in a second. We want to hear from you, and we'll be pulling, the responses to the poll. There we are, slido.com, and that's the code to join, slido.com. Please join using that code, or you can scan the QR code on your screen, which allows you to join the poll. At the end of that poll, we are going to collect all your responses and have a conversation. So it's also an opportunity for you to contribute to this really important discussion. And I'm really enjoying this because sometimes when you go to a lot of meetings, you get to hear from high-level speakers and executives who don't really delve into the technical aspects of how some of these solutions are being produced, how fit for purpose they are, and how they're actually being applied. And so thank you so much for that really insightful conversation. Now, we are going to move into the second segment, and we are going to have Swastik does, and we are also going to have Mohak Srivastava from MicroSave Consulting, who are going to engage in the second bit of a conversation about fit-for-purpose solutions. And we want to hear from them about what they're developing, how it's being applied, and some of the lessons that are coming from that work. So over to you, Swastik. And then after this conversation, we are going to discuss the results from the poll and have an interactive discussion and close the webinar. But over to you, Swastik. Thank you.
It looks like Swastik has not been able to join this call, but Mohak is here. Mohak, are you?
So just give me a second. I think Swastik is facing some internet issues. He was here for at least just the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, I saw him earlier. It seems like it's just But over to you, Mohak. You can cover as he tries to reconnect.
All right, okay. I'll start the presentation then. So basically, what we at MicroSave Consulting were trying to do is we are trying to develop. We pride ourselves in being the local leaders in global research kind of thing. So we try to always bring up the local nuances in whatever work we are trying to do. And one of our recent examples that we were actually doing was wherein we had to find out the penetration of financial services in specific geographies in the country. So basically, the access to financial services serves as the road to development of economic growth is something that has been well researched and seen across a lot of journals, whether it's PC Gap or whether it be World Bank, a lot of reports and articles have stressed about, the basic access to a financial banking point, whether it be a bank or whether it be your ATMs or banking corresponding agents, things like that. That's very necessary for the economic growth of a country. So now again, the most of the researchers that we see, they usually work on Excels and they go by the number crunching route, wherein you have a you have one you distribute your country into different distinct geographic units, and from there you develop your basic like you try to identify, okay, which area does have a saturation of financial access points and which area does not have the same, and that helps you in policy making. However, what is often overlooked in these cases is the nuances that is often necessary to like there are small pockets and small areas which actually uh, can be overlooked when we try to compress all of this data into an aggregated result. And I think Swastik is here now, so he can continue from this point.
Hey, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped off over there. Thank you. I'm sure Mohak was able to introduce himself. He's a very talented data scientist in our team here at MicroSave Consulting. Mohak, did you tell them a little bit about what we do?
So I was just trying to explain the problem.
Okay, sure thing. So a little bit about MicroSave Consulting. What we do is that we are in the impact consulting space, and financial inclusion is one of the domains that we've been working on for over close to 25 years right now as an organization. And the model that Mohak would have introduced to you is an agent optimization study. So here we use AI and geospatial modeling to optimize agent networks. So this is a financial inclusion challenge. So, Mohak, did you tell them a little bit about the two geographies that we worked in? I think there were some interesting points about the differences between the two.
Yeah, so I was just coming to that. So our research was focused in two blocks in India. Blocks is basically an administrative unit in a fixed area, which is governed, which has its own governing bodies. So in that, we had taken two different blocks, each having its own unique demographic and financial profile. One had a saturation of banking financial touch points. The other did not. The first block had a very high population density, while the second block, which is Kursakatta, had a very low population density. It was one of the lowest in all the blocks that we had available. So again, these differences made it possible for us to understand that how financial inclusion and access points actually vary across these points too.
So basically, the whole issue behind access points, a lot of government service delivery in India is also enabled through bank accounts. So over the last 10 years or so, the government has put a lot of pressure on increasing access to financial services. And some of those financial services also coincide with government service delivery. So, like Mohak was mentioning, these two blocks, Navapur in Maharashtra and Kursakata in Bihar, they were quite different in their scope. So, when we talk about a financial access point, Mohak, what kind of places are we talking about very quickly?
So these can be your bank branches, these can be your banking corresponding agent points, these can be your ATMs, or other financial players like MFIs and NBFCs, or which is a non-banking financial institute, all their outlets. Basically, any place where you can go conduct your basic financial withdrawals and deposits and savings and get loans and pensions and things like that.
All right. So over here you mentioned a few players, which include banking correspondents. Could you tell us in one line who they are?
Okay, so given the brick and mortar nature of bank branches, it is not feasible to place a bank branch in every required location. So banking correspondents are these people who are basically as an outreach program of the bank. They are basically the branches outreach. These are linked to an individual bank branch, and these can provide the public with the basic financial services that they need. So whether it be cash transfer, whether it be withdrawal, whether it be deposits, and now they are even enabled to provide you with loans and provide you with G2P services. So yeah, in essence, they are sort of like a mini bank with some of the facilities that the actual branch can provide.
And a G2P service is actually a UPI-based online wallet-based payment. So like the two kind of blocks that we were working with, they so one block had around 350 to 400,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, of which
Yes,
many
yes,
did
yes.
not have. I think over more than 50% of that population did not have access to a financial service point within 5 kilometers. Was that correct?
Right, exactly. And the interesting point about that, what was when we found out in our research was, so basically when the area of that entire block was spread around more than 216 square kilometers, and within that there were there were three distinguishable pockets where all the financial access points were focused on. So it was not as distributed as you would expect these things to be, because a bank. A banking point or a financial access point is expected to be spread out throughout the region to provide equal opportunity for each and every individual. But that was not the case, and these points that were popping up were very focused and controlled near the central locations.
All right. So basically, can you take us through the solution very quickly? Starting from, I mean, we start in a lot of these problems, we start with a problem statement and we think of
Right.
the solution. But often the biggest block when we work with such grassroots level problems is the data set. So how did you go about acquiring the data that you needed? And what was the basic steps that you followed?
Okay, so we used an open source data collection app, ODK, which helps us to capture geolocations, and we actually went on the field for this. So we got a list of all the villages within each block that were available, and the urban centers too. And then from the district headquarters, we started mapping each and every village. Got the center of that village as a location, tapped its geolocation, and then used the official sources to get the population of each and every village. Apart from that, for the financial points, we actually visited each and every financial point that was present in that district. Because here's another point. So, like a lot of data on this is available on government sources and open sources. However, it is not real time. A lot of these agents actually, a lot of these bank branches actually can be shut down. An agent shop can be shut down. People can move off, migrate, things like that. So to get the real situation on the ground, we actually went there and captured the geolocation data using open source technologies. And we
So
ended
you're
up
saying that
capturing almost 155 different financial access points in one village, in one block, and close to almost 400 or 450 financial access points in the second block.
so based on the access points and the distance to the villages, was that the only consideration you had when you were talking about increasing access points? I think there's something in your solution where you talk about agent segmentation as well. I mean, there's one thing to suggest that it would be good if there is an access point in such a location, but how would you decide whether that location is profitable in the first place? For a
Okay.
say a banking for a say there's a microfinance organization like you were talking about an MFI, why would they place how did your solution take that profitability into account?
Okay, so in this case, the fun was the actually if you know the exact location where the majority of your underserved or unserved population is, so that is where you have the greatest market potential, right? Because that is the place where people do not have access to these services, and they need a financial access point to conduct their daily transactions. That is one. Apart from that, when you talk about the agent segmentation model that we built, so it was based on the basic indicators. So based on the based on other researches that we have done at MicroSave. So we have seen that what is the volume of transactions that a well-to-do banking agent does on a monthly basis. So, and what is his break-even points? Things that like that have been calculated. So how many agents are sufficient for a particular population threshold is something that we have established from our earlier researches. So the agent segmentation model tries to assort a master agent and his spokes, or basically people who are not who deal with a smaller frequency and smaller amounts, but their main aim is to actually promote the inclusion of financial inclusion within their designated areas. And the master agent is somebody who actually provides them with funds, provides them with support and things like that.
So the stress over here, what I can think as a takeaway from this particular modeling exercise, it's that it's not just about bringing in the AI models, which can obviously help us in segmentation tasks, which can obviously help us in optimization tasks. but there is a certain aspect of the subject matter understanding which cannot be divorced from these scenarios, because sometimes the data sets that we use for our decision making is very important, and those cannot be formed or created with any kind of rigor without this kind of subject matter understanding. So what were some of the outcomes of this particular program?
So talking about the outcomes, so what we were able to assess and identify was even in blocks where there is a saturation of financial services, there are pockets which are still underserved and unserved, which actually need placement of a financial access point for their betterment. And the other part that it actually had was the concentration of agents is more supply side driven rather than demand side driven currently. Of course, it does make sense because you'll try to set up shop in places which have access to good roads and good electricity and things like that. However, the demand side aspect of this is often overlooked. And given that financial inclusion is one of the social development goals (SDG), so it is important that the demand side perspective is also brought to the forefront, and financial inclusion is promoted in such a way that people in remote locations and far off places can also get can also come under the ambit of financial inclusion.
All right. So if we just have to round off this discussion, so I see a lot of applications of AI over here, starting from the spatial segmentation, from the agent segmentations, right down to a model which use the geospatial data and the distances over there. In fact, even I can see its applicability in sort of agent deployment. So when we talk about scalability over here, can you think of other practical applications of this kind of a solution, this kind of ground knowledge-based, grassroots-driven data approach along these lines, which use these broad contours?
Certainly. So this is actually something that we have done with one of our clients in the recent past, wherein the client was a financial service provider, and they wanted to identify the best location where they could set up their banking agents to promote financial inclusion and drive maximum revenue from each agent. So again, in this case, we did not have to do a survey because we know that the people working for that financial institute, we just circulated a tool with them, an open source software again, something like ODK, and they just had to fill in their geospatial location. And using that, and then we mapped it to their geographies and where they were actually located. And from that, we were able to predict, okay, these are the population hotspots where actually you do not have a presence right now. And these are the best locations where you should go and, where you should put your next agent location to drive maximum revenue. So this is something that other financial service providers can also be can leverage and refine their decision-making process.
Thank you, Swas. If you could wrap up.
And Davis, yes, absolutely. So just to wrap up, I mean, the financial services field is, of course, something organizations such as us can do understand very well. But we can also see applications and scope for partnering with a lot of people where we would like to take what we've learned from the ground, from this AI-driven geospatial modeling and segmentation particular implementation, and apply it in mobile health units, apply it to the positioning of, say, community health workers, right? Or even predictive analytics, which can forecast school dropout rates based on socioeconomic data. So any kind of delivery of public utilities and any kind of geospatial positioning in an optimized way is a solution that we would be very keen on working on people with, even in water, electricity demand, school dropout rates, as well as health as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for having a listen. We would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much. Over to you, Davis.
Thank you, Swastik and Mohak, for that really insightful discussion. There's no way of summarizing it, and unfortunately, we are running out of time. But just I'm sure everybody has access to a screen, and you can see the poll results. The question was, what criteria should determine whether an AI tool is good fit for use in development? And I hope that the conversations have been really useful to you. The first response is, what's the problem we're trying to solve, and how does using AI compare with other solutions in terms of cost, likely impact over the short and long term? We are also hearing that the AI tool should directly address a well-defined problem or need in the development context. It should contribute to improving outcomes such as healthcare, education, financial inclusion, and environmental sustainability. So you have basically well-defined problems and thinking about the outcomes and then finding the process or the pathway. As you scroll down, we are also reading it can be modified to meet the needs of the users and archive the needed goals. Of course, ethical principles and social impact of the AI tool are really critical. We're also seeing further down that it should actually solve a problem. It's a simple task that AI can do. It protects and it needs to protect personal information. The community that the AI tool is being developed for or is covering is actually involved in its development. So the users, the end users, and I'm glad that you are still going out to the field, doing the mapping, the geolocation, and looking at other data sources, especially official data sources, and mapping that or layering that, with the geolocation data to really develop the solutions, because it allows you to really understand the context. So thank you so much for those responses. Now we are going to turn to our speakers. You've seen some of the responses that are coming through the Slido, and it would be just quickly to hear from you, Tracey Lee, and of course, Poornima. Is there anything that stands out for you? It's sort of, I think some of the questions were covered in your presentation, but is there something that really jumps out for you? At least for me, is the inclusion of the communities for which the solution is actually being developed. Is a really important point that's often forgotten in these conversations. And then we'll hear from Swastik and Mohak if there are any responses or things that stand out for you from the poll results that we've seen. Tracey Lee?
Yeah, I'll go. So what I'm actually really happy to see is that a lot of people are basically bringing up, does it actually solve the problem? And I always think that this is a good starting point, because as you said at the start in your introduction, Davis, with the sort of pressure that kind of comes from either funders or just sort of general community to try to find problems that AI can address, what is happening sometimes is that the AI isn't actually solving the problem. At the outset, we think it'll solve the problem, but it's not actually changing or influencing the outcomes that we want to influence. And so there's mention also of it should be influencing outcomes in healthcare or education or environmental state sustainability and so on. So I think thinking about that, and in the conversation I had with Poornima, really bringing out what is the very specific problem that you're addressing and making sure that your AI solution addresses that is very critical, I think.
Fantastic. Poornima, anything that stands out for you?
Yeah, thanks, Davis, and thank you, Tracey, for that summary. I fully agree that thinking about the problem and how it solves it is important. I would want to add a bit of nuance to this. You can build these AI tools, but I think what is also important to keep in mind, in addition to it making sure that it solves the problem, is also ensuring that it plugs into people's ways of working as is, right? You can build this like really fancy tool because you're under pressure, or like it's the I don't know, tool du jour, but if people have to go out of their way to use it, then it's also basically useless, right? Because your end users will, I don't know, try it out for a few days, but if it doesn't really work for them, then it's going to be useless. You will have spent a lot of time and resources building something that no one will use. So it's also worth thinking not just about how it solves the problem, but like whether it solves the problem, but how it does that. Does it really feel essential to people, right? No one's asking themselves whether Gmail is a good thing. It's obvious, everyone uses it. And so it's useful also to think of your AI tool as something that has to plug into how people already do their work, and that is part of thinking about what kinds of problems you're solving. I think that's just the nuance I wanted to add.
That's a really good point. And maybe Mohak and Swastik, we've heard from the poll result there that when we speak of garbage in, garbage out, now you've been to the field and collected this data, and of course, use some of the open source tools. What are the parameters, for example, to consider when it comes to evaluation of the quality, completeness of the data that's actually going into the whole process and feeding these large language models or the AI tools? Maybe just a reflection on that would
Sure
be
thing.
important.
I'll go first. So the one thing that keeps coming back to my mind is something that was shown to me a long, long time ago. It's called the CRISP DM framework. It was developed by IBM way back in the early 2000s. And we have to remember that the world of AI, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. This has been work which has been done for a very long time before us under different names. So there are some things to learn from our elders, so to speak. And I love the CRISP DM framework because it brings in a very healthy attention to evaluation of the results of your model, of model drift, of considerations like this, which are built into frameworks that you can incorporate into program design. Right at the outset, that is what we try to do. We try to build in these evaluationary things into the design of any program and have that written in stone, like, in the proposal while going forward. Another thing about garbage in, garbage out is that we got to understand when we stick to our lane and when we let other experts speak up. I'm also thinking about something else I saw a long time ago. It was basically talking about the field of right now, ML and AI was called data science at one point of time when we started. So we saw 3 Venn diagrams, basically 3 Venn circles, essentially. And one was an understanding of statistics, which is very important in our field if you want to understand the base models. One is computer science, or the broad kind of skills that you need to do to basically just use a large language model, right? They're open source, they exist somewhere. Who creates these pipelines? But I think the oft forgotten other circle was the subject matter expertise. And I think I'm lucky to be working in an organization where I can finally see the centralization of that subject matter expert, which is what we did on the field as well. We knew where we were good at, what we were good at as the data insights domain. But we were lucky enough to have that perspective from our colleagues because we've been working in financial inclusion for a while. If it was some other, like we work in health as well, but in health, we would be very keen to partner with other people as well. So there is no removing the subject matter expert. AI is going to replace some jobs, maybe. I'm not going to bet on that, but it's not going to replace subject matter experts in development, at least, in my opinion.
That's a really
I don't know if you have any thoughts.
That's a really good point. And, the role of humans in all this will continue to be quite relevant. Mohak, I'll give you 1 minute to give some reflections. And we are shortly going to share the link to the post-event survey. Please take time to fill it so we can use it to improve the next series of events. We may not have answered all the questions, and I'm sure there might be others. A link has been shared in the chat where you can actually share questions for the panelists. And we're also happy to link you directly with the panelists if you're interested in continuing the conversation beyond this particular webinar. Mohak, over to you.
Right. So a question that was asked to us was basically how the financial service providers operating in villages unit profitability is a key factor. And so one of the key research areas and key outcomes was actually finding out a population density or a population threshold which can support your next oncoming age, which locations can actually support that new banking agent or financial inclusion point. And so that it does, so that is a sort of consideration that we take in whenever we are building any pipelines and developing any thresholds when trying to answer these things. So profitability is something that comes from the number of the potential revenue that you can generate from each each customers, and more customers usually converts to more revenue, and that's how we actually design the entire segmentation exercise.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this interactive and highly informative webinar on fit for purpose when it comes to AI. I don't know if we have the link to the post-event survey. You could share that if you have it. But just to say, lots to learn. And I'm told that the post-event survey has failed to load. So we'll be sending it out to you via email. Please share your feedback. And of course, like I said, if you are interested in furthering the discussion beyond this particular webinar, feel free to reach out to us. We thank you so much for joining us this evening Nairobi time, and we look forward to an ongoing conversation. Thank you so much to all our speakers. We really appreciate you spending your time to share your expertise and experience on this really important subject matter. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you.